How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Liberty Hour, streaming through Spreaker Studio and the A2 Jack YouTube channel. I'm back here with Ricky, Michael, and Kasey, and I was just mentioning kind of my thoughts on some of the things that are reopening and some potential worries that I possibly have. And Ricky, I think you had a response or some question to what I was saying, so go right ahead.
Yes, sir. So, to add on to what you were saying about the whole people gathering at the lake and all that stuff like that, I've noticed that ever since businesses started opening up, people have been acting like, oh, hey, since things are opening up, it's safe now. When that's not the case. It's just they're opening up for the economy so it doesn't crash. But people have the wrong interpretation. But like what you were saying just before the break, how would you enforce it so that people don't start gathering, or so people have this different mindset? Like, what precautions or what enforcement would you say is necessary for this? Like, if people were at the lake, do you think there needs to be more like officials coming in? Do you think people should only be able to go if they reserve? Do you think like more public communities need to start doing reservations only? Like, what is it? What do you think?
I have to say, before I answer that question, Ricky, not only was that probably one of the best points you ever made on the show that when you've been on, that was probably one of the best questions you've ever asked here when you've been on. So I gotta give you credit for that.
All right, bro. Thanks, bro.
But
Thanks
I'll
for
go
making me
ahead and
sound
answer.
stupid, you know.
I gave you a compliment, you know. You don't have to be
I
a
know, bro.
jackass
I'm
about
kidding,
it.
bro.
But anyway, I'll go ahead and answer what you asked me. So, no cap.
For anybody listening, this is the last time I'll be on the show.
What are my thoughts? Okay, so what I think needs to happen is obviously. The thing is, they're already announcing like Disney World and stuff like that's going to reopen. And the thing is, I'm not necessarily all against that, but you need to have limited capacity. It's the same thing if you were to reopen like stadiums and arenas. You need to limit it to where you only have like families in a row, individuals separated apart, and you only have like 25% capacity. My worry, though, is regardless of what you do when you open these places up, there's not going to be, when you're at these parks or when you're at these stadiums or at these lakes, whatever the case may be, you're not going to have it to where it's 100% always going to be social distance. Because let me give you an example. If we were to open arenas or whatever the case was, when you enter the arena, I mean, unless they have it completely taken care of, there's going to be times when you enter and leave that people are going to be too close to each other. It's just going to happen. So what I would do is this. I think that we need to reopen the economy in many different ways. So I would cautiously reopen things. I would actually gone a little bit slower than what we're doing right now. I think that we're going a little too quick. They're already announcing places of worship are going to reopen, which is going to be groups of up to 100 people, which I worry about infections and stuff like that. I would do this, though. I would say reopen everything, but at the same time, let people know this is not over. Because as you mentioned, when we've reopened stuff, people have forgotten about that. There's people that are saying COVID is over, we don't socially distance anymore, and that's a problem. You need to have health officials that are out there saying, we're going to reopen stuff because we don't want people to get, to lose their livelihood, because we need people to be able to pay their mortgages and people need to be able to make money. But at the same time, you need to say, hey, this is still going on, therefore you should socially distance. I actually have my own questions on masks because there's another virus that was very related to the coronavirus called SARS-CoV-2, which masks proved to be pretty ineffective when it came to that virus. So I have actually questions of the effectiveness of masks when it comes to coronavirus. I think that there's split studies that kind of show both ways on that front. But regardless, what I would say is this. I would say be responsible, but at the same time, if there's anybody that is either elderly or that is in a high risk, already has some sort of underlying health condition, stay inside, don't go out, have some family member do stuff for you if possible. And then what I would say is still for people to try to limit the contact with those types of people. That way, those people, since they're the ones most likely to have critical conditions or even die from this virus, to try to not go out, limit the amount that of exposure you have to the outside world. If you need to go get groceries or whatever, do pick up or whatever you need to on that front. But I think the number one thing we can do is still the socially distancing thing, and I think that's going to be the big thing until we get a vaccine for this. That's just my thoughts. I guess Michael or Kasey, if you guys have a response on that, go right ahead.
if you have a response.
Oh, me? Oh, no. I don't have a response on that. I'm sorry.
All good. I guess
We agree.
We do
What's
agree.
up?
I agree with everything you said.
Yeah, bro, 100%.
okay.
We stand by
Well,
your
thank you for letting me know that. My news correspondent, aka my mom, just brought a very interesting piece of news in for me. So we're actually going to transition. We may come back to COVID
Breaking news
in a little bit, but breaking news,
Interesting.
and we're going to talk about this a little bit. Ricky, if you have anything to say on this, feel free. I'm going to talk about this with Michael and Kasey a little bit as well. Is this whole thing that's going on in Minneapolis with the whole George Floyd killing by the police there, and breaking news I just got from my news correspondent, aka my mom. She said that they are the protests and the riots that are going on there. They are now starting to set the police department on fire in Minneapolis. So that is a big news update. You heard it first here on the AJ or on the Liberty Hour podcast. But
it is a blaze.
It is a blaze. Oh, it's a blaze.
It is a blaze.
Okay, well, all right, so it is on fire. But anyways, I guess I'll go ahead and get into this. So anybody that hasn't watched the news these past few days, just a little update for you. Essentially, in Minneapolis, what happened is there was this guy by the name of George Floyd. I think that he tried to forge some documents at a restaurant or something like that, and he appeared to be under the influence of alcohol, and he was arrested. And while he was arrested, he was on the ground, and a police officer had his knee on the back of the dude's neck for about 8 minutes or so, which led to the dude basically dying of, assumed to be, I believe, asphyxiation, or just not being able to breathe. He literally said multiple times, "I can't breathe," which goes back to the Eric Gardner case that happened 6 years ago in New York. But in response to this, there have been mass protests, not just in Minneapolis, but in St. Paul, in New York City, in Chicago. There was even some protests that happened down in LA. And a lot of people are already making comparisons to the Rodney King riots that happened in 1992, when there were plenty of businesses that were set on fire, plenty of looting that happened, and we're seeing the same thing happen here. But on the big issue is, this is another issue of somebody being killed, an African-American man getting killed by police in a way that it did not need to happen. There has been some footage that came out where the police department was saying that he was resisting arrest. There was some footage that came out from a local restaurant nearby that was released to the public that showed otherwise, and everybody's now calling basically for the cops to be sentenced to, prison. And they've already been fired from their job, and the mayor of the city has actually been in agreement with that and actually agrees with the sentencing as well. So I guess I'll go ahead and start with Michael or Kasey. Either of you guys can feel free to start on this. What's your guys' thought on this case? What do you guys think needs to happen with these officers, and what do you think can happen just to change what has been going on with this issue so much in this country?
Well, this is off the back of the other guy that got chased down by two white just neighbors, right? And he was just jogging. So this is
Ahmaud Arbery, yeah.
So this is fresh off that, and it's even bigger than that, I think, because it's the police, right? And so these are the people that are supposed to protect you. You rely on these people, and you're pretty much forced to have faith in them that they will protect you. And for the most part, they really do. And a lot of people do their jobs, and this is the little percent that gives them a bad name. And they really messed this one up, because you got a dude in handcuffs. He was handcuffed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's not doing anything. He's not trying to get up. He's not doing any of that. And he's having trouble breathing for minutes. And you can hear him say from all the way over from the sidewalk that he's trying to breathe and he can't. And so you're literally choking him to death. And I can't think of one excuse for the officer. I can't. Just lift your knee up, and if he resists, then you can hold. He doesn't seem that capable, right? He seems pretty old. I don't know how old he is, but you can hold a dude on his back and without choking him, right? Mm-hmm. So I can't think of any excuse. And the fact that I think 4 officers were fired.
46. He died at 46.
46. Yeah. I mean, I know the officer was old too, but still, I mean, you got a gun on you, you got a taser on you, you can hold him down. And if he somehow manages to get up with handcuffs behind, with his hands handcuffed behind his back, then fair play, but that's not going to happen. And so, it's just, it's inexcusable, and they should be tried for murder.
Kasey, you have anything you'd like to say on the issue?
Yeah, I definitely do think that the police officers should be charged for murder and go to jail for what they did. I see so many of these things so often on the news that it sucks. It's almost not surprising anymore what I see, as shocking as it is, because it happens all the time. And it's terrible. It's almost confusing to know what to do about it, because you have people rioting and setting things on fire, which obviously I don't think is the right thing to do, but at the same time, as a black person myself, I don't blame them. I'm angry too, and I have my own family to worry about as well. I get worried about getting pulled over with my dad or like with my little brothers. I don't want them to grow up in a world like that where they have to be afraid to walk on the street or be in their car. That's terrible. And I don't know, there's obviously no easy solution to something like that, but I hope someday it gets resolved. But as an angry person, as an angry black person about it, I honestly don't mind that they're setting the police stations on fire, because I'm angry too, and they need to do something about it. I do agree that it's a small percent of the police officers that give the rest of them a bad name, because there's obviously a lot of good police officers out there. But the ones that aren't the good ones, I just hope we get them out of there somehow. No easy solution, but it's just a terrible situation overall.
I think you said that really well, and I guess my only thing I would semi-disagree with you on, but the thing is, I don't live in the same world. I don't understand what it's like to have to deal with so many people that get killed by this stuff. I do understand why they're angry and why they're doing it. I do think that setting certain businesses on fire and the looting is a little bit, I don't think there's really, I would just say I don't think there's justification for that. I understand the anger. I don't think there's justification, because the fact is those people alone didn't do anything to those people specifically.
Right.
However, what I will say is I'm a person that believes in completely peaceful protest. I think the words of MLK are ones that need to be echoed when it comes to this issue. I think he's turned over in his grave on both sides of this. But one thing I will say is, when it comes, like you said, with lighting the police department on fire, those, I'm not saying all of them, but there are some of those people. Those were the people that basically did this. So by setting that on fire, I don't even have as much of an issue with that necessarily, because of the fact that there were 4 people that were in there that killed one of their own, and so they don't view them as people that are protecting their community. They view them as people that are terrorizing their community. So I completely understand that. I 100% get that aspect of it. I guess the only other thing I have to say is it is a very unfortunate situation that we have to witness and that things are going through. But one thing that needs to be said is, I think that calling out the looting and the violence that has been going on, I think that should be done, but at the same time, you can't call that out 50-50. I see so many people online when there's like celebrities and stuff that are calling out this violent, calling out what happened with George Floyd, and they're like, why don't you calling out the looting, or why aren't you calling out the violence? And they should be, but it should not be on the equal level, because B would not have happened if it was not for A. Therefore, A needs to be talked about a whole hell of a lot more than B.
Right.
Yeah,
I agree, because I do also believe in peaceful protest, and I guess it's like the other people, when they get angry, and it also makes me angry, so that's why I can understand from their perspective why they're rioting and setting things on fire, but all the anger is not to the good police out there. It's only to those few that are the really horrible ones. So,
and it's not a comfortable issue for white people to talk about, but there is blatant white privilege when it comes to this, because let's look at what happened in Michigan when you had people with literal guns on them go into City Hall that wanted stuff to be reopened, that were blocking streets for people who are like health workers and stuff like that, Nothing happened to those people, but these people who are protesting a killing, they're getting sprayed with tear gas, with all of this kinds of crap, and I think it's just absolutely ridiculous, and you can't equivocate both things. So that's just my thoughts. We'll continue with this discussion on part 3 of the Liberty Hour. Stay tuned.